Hello and welcome to Sarat Chandra IAS Academy, where your dreams are our mission. This is Yatharth here. In the last lecture, we talked about methane and COP28 and covered many mapping news. So I hope you can see that lecture, watch that lecture now. We'll move forward in this lecture talking about India and its dependence on coal. So hours before Prime Minister Modi reached Dubai for the COP28 meeting, India reiterated means repeated. It was not in a position to abandon means to completely leave its reliance on coal for electricity generation anytime soon. Even as it rapidly ramps up mean increase renewable energy supply. So we have already talked about this renewable energy supply also to ensure quick transition to green energy, which is its goal 2070 net zero. So coal is and would remain an important part of India's energy mix because of huge population and already reliance on the coal, let's say. So we'll discuss all this. It has always been as we move forward to meet our developmental priorities in our country. Foreign Secretary Vinay Mohan Kwatra said at a press conference in New Delhi ahead of the Prime Minister's visit to Dubai for the conference, where use of coal is once again expected to come up during discussions. Alright, so countries those are firing coal are in high heat during the climate change talks, but the burden of this, let's say, development or the blame of the global warming lies more on the countries from northern hemisphere, which used coal earlier and are majorly responsible. Now they are developed and talking about phasing out coal. So they must be the first one to do that. So India is often criticized for not phasing out its coal power plants fast enough, but it has maintained that it needs to continue with coal for some time to meet its growing electricity demands. Because population is already growing, we are the most populous country in the world now. China is not number one. Responding to questions on India's climate actions, Quatra said that India happened to be among a handful of large economies that were on track to fulfill all their climate commitments. So what are these climate commitments? You can always note down again and again. India is one of the very few major economies that is well on track to complete its obliged NDC, that is nationally determined contributions. In fact, we have announced and upgraded our NDC last year, and we are very happy to say that we are now well on our way even to meet these before upgraded NDC targets. So let's talk about India's reliance on coal. Why is India so loving to coal? So India is one of the largest emitters of planet warming gases behind only China, the US and the EU. So EU is actually a combination or let's say collection of many countries. So not to be considered, but let's say China, US and then India as a single country. The country depends on coal for 75% of its electricity needs and for 55% of its overall energy needs, and it's still a far way off quitting. If India stopped burning coal tomorrow, over 5 million people would lose their jobs. But for a price tag of around 900 billion over the next 30 years, the country can make sure nobody is left behind in the huge move to clean energy to curb means reduce human cost climate change. Moving forward, there's a International Forum for Environment, Sustainability and Technology, I4S, released two reports detailing how much it will cost for India to move away from coal and other dirty fuels without jeopardizing means to put in danger the livelihoods of millions who still are employed in coal mines and thermal power plants. So there are many people actually, those employment are provided by the coal sector. So this is one of the reasons that India cannot quit coal, but only one of the reasons. Of course, they will all be transitioned to different things. The biggest single investment to enable a just transition will be around the cost of setting up clean energy infrastructure, which the report estimates could be 472 billion by 2050. The country's coal use is expected to peak between 2035 and 2040. So it's actually increasing and will peak. According to government figures, PM Modi announced in 2021 that country will achieve net zero emissions, where it only puts out greenhouse gases it can somehow offset by 2070. India would need to add nearly 30 gigawatt of thermal power capacity over and above the 49 gigawatt of capacity already under construction during the course of this decade. This would take the overall thermal power capacity from 212 gigawatt today to nearly 300 gigawatt by 2030. So these are some figures that you are supposed to remember. Let's say 2030, just remember 300 gigawatt of thermal energy. Right now it's around 212 gigawatt. Okay, moving further, let's come to an infographic here. King coal. So as far as electricity generation is concerned, coal will remain India's mainstay means on which India will dependent mostly for many years to come. So capacity under construction 2022 to 30. So the solar capacity is the highest, please remember, but just seconded by the coal, and then going down to the wind, hydro, nuclear, biomass, PSP, small hydro, and gas. All right, moving further, just a second. So current and projected power capacity mix in percentage. So coal plus lignite will be quite high. Current and projected power capacity in percentage in 2030 and 2930. So here coal is higher as per the Ministry of Power and Central Electricity Authority. All right. So the question here arises, why India cannot quit coal? What are the reasons? So India has always been a power hungry country, but in the next few years, economy expands. It is likely to break all records. Between 2005 and 22, per capita electricity consumption doubled from 631 units to 1255 units in India, making it the third largest electricity market in the world. It is set to go up by over 40% in less than a decade. In absolute terms, from 1624 billion units to 2280 billion units. So basically, there is a lot of expenditure in electricity that is increasing. We are installing new electric appliances. Everybody is purchasing geysers, heaters, coolers, everything, washing machines. So they are essentially consuming more and more electricity. To meet this demand, it needs to set up massive capacities for, and the focus is on renewables. By 2030, 500 gigawatt of renewable energy led by solar is expected as compared to 178 gigawatt today. So approximately 3 times. Solar accounts for 71 gigawatt of that. So according to government, the country would need 777 gigawatt annual capacity. This is more true for renewable power, which is dependent on variety of factors, etc. Alright, to maintain energy equilibrium, backing down even 1 megawatt of thermal power would approximately require 3 megawatt of incremental renewable capacity. So what's the, let's say, main point here is that solar and wind energy, they are not reliable. There are days when sun does not come up for many days. There are days when sun is, let's say, covered by clouds. There are many days that are rainy. Alright, so we cannot depend completely on solar. How we can depend on solar is that we need to have a 3 to 4 times energy capacity towards solar to give, let's say, one time of what we need. So we need to build, let's say, 4 solar plants just to expect one solar plant equivalent electricity. So this is the issue with these renewable energies. So they can add as a substitute or, let's say, complementary energy, but not our main energy source. So coal will be our main energy source. So in terms of sheer installed capacity, solar would overtake coal by 2030. Alright, so in this decade at least we are not expecting. So what about gas? There are any other options except for coal. So gas is another option. So power generated by natural gas is way cleaner. The health effects attributable to NOx from a natural gas plant even within a 2 kilometer radius are negligible. But there is no expansion of gas-based power plant capacity in India. Why? A fall in production from Krishna Godavari Basin in Andhra Pradesh, where natural gas reserves were discovered in 2003. So domestic production is not there. A significant capacity is present stranded due to lack of availability of domestic gas and high cost of imported LNG. So LNG we discussed with the Qatar issue recently. Alright, so we depend on the import of LNG. We have no domestic supply of gas. That is why we cannot rely on the gas. Okay. The coal industry provides significant employment as well. In contrast, the wind and solar energy employed less than 0.2 million people. So employment is one issue. So long-term vision includes transitioning to renewable energy backed by sufficient battery storage or alternative options like hydrogen, leading to a reduction in coal-based power generation. Ultimate goal is what? To shut down massive coal power plants and depending on the renewable now. Moving further, let's see rat hole mining. What is it? So rat hole miners were recently mentioned in the Silkyara tunnel collapse. We saw rat hole miners were finally used to dig a small tunnel to carry out the workers from there. Alright, so what is this rat hole mining? It's very famous in Meghalaya. You can see here, these are the rat holes. or small mines in which a human has to go inside and keep digging. So they are of two types. It's so named it involved digging tunnel 3-4 feet deep, barely allowing workers to crawl in and out like a rat. So they have to squat while extracting coal with pickaxes, very small axes. So we'll see geographically or geologically why is it a reason. The side cutting type of mining is usually done on hill slopes by following a coal seam. What is a coal seam? Coal seam is, let's say, a layer of coal between the rock. This is a coal seam, let's say. The worker has to go there. Worker has to go here in a very small and keep digging this. Keep digging this. It becomes a rat hole. Alright. So the second type called box cutting entails digging a circular or squarish pit 5 square meter in width up to a depth of 400 feet. Miners would drop down in makeshift cranes or using rope and bamboo ladders. So essentially the concept is saying, let's talk about what are the issues with the rat hole mining. So the government has little control over the land in Meghalaya, a sixth schedule state. So we'll see about the sixth schedule also, because in Ladakh also it is in demand. So where the Coal Mines Nationalization Act of 1973 does not apply. The landowners are thus also the owners of the mineral beneath. So coal mining boomed after Meghalaya attained statehood in 1972. In 1973 we talked about Nagaland also. So the terrain and expenses involved discouraged mine owners from employing advanced drilling machines. So laborers mainly from Assam, Nepal, neighboring regions basically, they risked the hazard. Hazard means the danger of rat hole mining. Asphyxiation. Asphyxiation means dying because of lack of oxygen in the blood, because of poor ventilation, collapse of mines due to lack of structural support and flooding, to earn thrice or 4 times as much as working in farms or construction sites. So apart from the issues of safety and health, unregulated mining led to land degradation, deforestation and water with high concentration of sulfate, iron and toxic heavy metals, low dissolved oxygen and high biochemical oxygen demand. This biochemical oxygen demand question earlier came in prelims, so please revise this concept. Two rivers also are there in Meghalaya, Lukha and Mitundu, become too acidic to sustain aquatic life because of this rat hole mining. So these factors led to the NGT, that is National Green Tribunal 2010, banning rat hole mining in Meghalaya in 2014. While observing that there is umpteen mean many, number of cases whereby virtue means because of rat hole mining. During the rainy season, water flooded into the mining areas, resulted in death of many. Illegal mining and transportation of coal and mentioned in interim reports of one-man committee appointed by High Court of Meghalaya has continued despite the ban and loss of lives. So unlike in Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand, we are seeing the geological reason here, that why rat hole mining is so much prevalent in Meghalaya only. What is the reason? So the coal belt of India is towards this side, you can see in the eastern side. So unlike in Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand, coal seams in Meghalaya are very thin. This makes rat hole mining more economically viable than open cast mining. The state has an estimated reserve of many, like 500 million tons of low ash, high sulfur coal belonging to the Eocene age, that is 56 million years ago. So the stakes of a selection of locals have been so high that the state government has been under pressure to facilitate the resumption of mining legally. In 2023, Meghalaya Chief Minister Conrad Sangma said Coal Ministry approved mining leases for 4 of the 17 prospective license applicants. So this is not important. You can just focus on what is the geological reason and why it has been banned. Alright, this is a picture of a rat hole mine. You can see the rock here, the sedimentary rock here. Alright, and these are the coal seams which are being mined, let's say. A person needs to keep going deeper and deeper to find the lower seams which have better availability of the coal. So this is the rat hole mining. We will also be talking about the malaria cases which continue to dip in India, which is a good news. WHO report. So contrasting to the global trend, India continued to witness a decline. Decline means a reduction in the malaria cases and deaths in 2022, according to a new WHO report. There were around 33 lakh malaria cases and 5,000 deaths in India last year, a decrease of 30% and 34% respectively compared with 2021. Please take care of a climatic factor also. This is an El Nino year. Alright, so there are heat waves and mosquitoes have not gotten so much time as opposed to the La Nina years to grow. Globally, there are 249 million cases, 5 million more than in 2001. So the number of malaria cases globally has plateaued over the last decade or so. Plateaued means not increasing, neither decreasing. That means it came to an increase and then plateaued. Alright. So an increase during the pandemic. In 2020, the first year of pandemic, there were 11 million cases. The number of global malaria deaths are also higher. That is around 6 lakh death in 2022 compared with 5 lakh 76,000 death in 2019. When we see further, what's important for us is what is actually malaria. So malaria is primarily considered a vector-borne disease, not a water-borne disease. Please remember, we last studied this in the Kenya, where water filters were acting in the Archi River. So the disease is transmitted to humans through the bites of infected female mosquitoes. Female mosquito, please remember, particularly mosquitoes of the Anopheles genus. These mosquitoes serve as vectors, meaning they carry and transmit the plasmodium parasites that cause malaria. So mosquitoes only serve as a vector. Mosquitoes do not get malaria. Malaria is not classified as waterborne disease. Why? Because unlike waterborne disease that are transmitted through contaminated water sources, malaria relies on the bites of infected mosquitoes for transmission. The pathogen does not directly live in the water. Alright, so stagnant water can be breeding ground for the mosquitoes, but water does not play a role in the spread of malaria itself. Malaria is a potentially life-threatening disease caused by the Plasmodium parasite, transmitted to humans through the bites of infected female Anopheles mosquito. Furthermore, we can see there are several species of Plasmodium that can infect human. Plasmodium looks like just a small parasite, like a prokaryotic bacteria. With the F. falciparum and P. vivax means the most common and dangerous. They can also cause, this falciparum can also cause the brain malaria, which is the most, let's say, critical stage of malaria or the type or the most fatal type. Malarial symptom, let's see, fever, fatigue, headache, muscle and joint pain because of the death of RBC. Nausea and vomiting. It also causes anemia. Anemia we saw recently in the sickle cell anemia. In 2 lectures ago I covered this. Okay, malaria transmission is through a vector of female Anopheles species. They are the primary vectors that transmit the Plasmodium parasite. Only infected mosquitoes can spread malaria. Not all mosquitoes will spread malaria. Please remember this. Alright, let's just see a brief life cycle. So this is the first step when a mosquito, infected mosquito bites you, which in its salivary glands has Plasmodium pathogen, and it is transmitted to your blood through the skin and goes to liver, where it develops into various stages, then multiplies, comes to your RBC, and when it erupts out of RBC, then it spreads into your skin and bloodstream. So when it erupts out of the RBC, you feel rather cold because of release of hemozyne, etc. So there are various biological processes. From here, it again goes to the salivary glands of the mosquito as a cyclic process from its, let's say, stomach or intestine wall. So essentially it moves to salivary glands of another mosquito which is infected through you and then infects another human. So these are some, let's say, medicines or drugs that cure malaria. Chloroquine, there are many, quinine. So these are two main, chloroquine and quinine. Alright, however, the mosquitoes have grown pretty resistant. Even the Plasmodium has grown pretty resistant to this quinine, etc. Alright. So what we need to learn from these diseases, let's say whether it is sickle cell anemia or malaria, we need to focus on 2-3 things. One is what causes it. Is it genetic disease? Is it a condition? Is it a syndrome? Alright, or is it caused by some other pathogen? There are many diseases in news in 2023 especially. We covered the Zika disease also, the Zika virus. It comes from Uganda in Africa. Alright, we just mentioned Uganda also in mapping in last lecture near Kenya. There was Tanzania, Marabi, many countries which I told you, South Sudan, Ethiopia, Somalia here. Alright, so you can connect one thing to other, and that is the gist of the news. Whenever you see a lecture, whenever you see notes, you must have an all view on overview of what is going on. Alright, when we talk about the mapping portion, I taught you the mapping portion in the last lecture also. We started from Venezuela, Colombia, we saw the Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, then we came to Brazil, Guyana, Suriname, French Guiana, alright, Chile here, then Argentina here, Paraguay, alright, Uruguay. So these are all the important things that you need to remember before the prelims comes. There are only a few days left for prelims. So take care of all these things, whether it is GS3, GS1, major issues in India, and especially mapping. I always focus on mapping portion. Alright, so please take care of this. This was about today's lecture. I'll be seeing you in the next lecture. This is Yatharth here signing off. Thank you very much. Have a great day ahead. See you soon.